What's going on, y'all? How are y'all doing tonight? How are y'all doing on this Friday? And we have a article where it's stating that Biden has went to the Supreme Court and asking for them to go ahead and reinstate the student loan forgiveness plan. So we are going to talk about it. I'm very excited to see what's going to be going on. Do you think that the Supreme Court is going to go ahead and let the 16 million applications that they had approved? Do you think they're going to start there? Or is Biden going to have to extend the no student loan payments and interest past December 31st? We're going to see. But tonight, I'm going to have the debt-free dad on here, and we're just going to chit-chat about the student loan forgiveness. So let me go ahead and bring him up. What's going on, debt-free dad? How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. What's going on, sis? How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Now, you know, this is our favorite topic right here, talking about student loan forgiveness, what's going to be going on. Now, you know, before today, it's just been all these lawsuits going back and forth on, you know, what legally is it, can Biden forgive the student loans or not? Tell me, what do you think about that?
Well, a lot of the lawsuits initially it was about 6 states. We can guess if we had to guess red or blue, but it was about 6 states who all filed litigation. Some of them were just, kind of crazy. One talked about the tax burden that a person would get. And like that one, I think was a non-issue because, the forgiveness wouldn't have any federal tax implications, but potentially states. But some of them pose legitimate arguments. I think the biggest one that was posed was, is it abuse of Congress's power? Is the president taking away power from Congress when it comes to this? So that was one of the bigger ones. And one of the more ridiculous ones I saw was that it was just essentially racist. It was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause because it would have benefited brown and black people more so. It got real ridiculous real fast, but those were just the lawsuits. Maybe one or two probably had some real legitimate merit to it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, they're stating that forgiving this student loans, it was going to be like $500 million for them to do this. So it would, and it could possibly, hurt, especially with inflation and things like that. So I can see it. But, you know, we're in $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. And really, we have 45 million Americans that have student loans. And I was really surprised that 26 million people had applied for the student loan forgiveness.
Right. I know people was going. I mean, people were going to get that application in. We can agree to disagree whether or not student loan forgiveness should or should happen. But if it does happen, definitely turn your application in. So I already knew a lot of people were going to jump on it. I just think it's kind of a travesty because I know a lot of people were looking forward to starting the new year having that clean slate of $10,000 or $20,000, especially if you're somebody who you only owe $10,000 or $15,000 left, or you paid off your $10,000 loan and now you get to get your money back while the government handed. Like I kind of see where those people would be a little bit hot right now.
Yeah, I can totally see that, but I was kind of surprised that so many people had applied because it just seemed like it was kind of a mix of some people saying that it shouldn't be forgiven and there are other things that are more important than the student loans. But within the time frame right now, 16 million people they had approved to be forgiven so far, right before all the lawsuits and things had happened. So I was kind of surprised, and I was looking at my application because I'm like, okay, was I approved? But when I looked on there, I haven't seen anything. So
I processed mine.
Yeah, so I'm like, I need to know, did anybody get an email stating that they were approved to possibly get their student loans forgiven? Because I don't know anybody that was in that spot right now.
Right.
But what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up this article. Let's see. So in this article, it's stating that Biden has officially asked the Supreme Court to rule on this student loan forgiveness. And right here in the middle, it's stating that 16 million they're asking to start off with the 16 million applicants who were already approved. Now, with this going to the Supreme Court, what do you think? With Biden asking them to go ahead and reinstate it for the 16 million, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, is going to the Supreme Court is a two-part question. The first part is just him asking the Supreme Court to reinstate it so these things can start to get processed and paid off. If I had to bet money, and you know, I've never been on the Supreme Court, but I work with federal judges and justices on the highest court in states. I would be shocked if the Supreme Court actually pushed this through to allow these loans to get processed. Part of the reason being is that anytime you have an issue that's going before a court that's going to hear it, if it's a constitutional issue, it makes the need for the court to hear it a little bit more important. And you would see, like, even as let's say if you're a young attorney and you watch TV shows and it's during the trial and somebody will say, "Objection, Your Honor, relevance." Well, it's not relevant, so it shouldn't come in. They actually teach you as an attorney, always put a constitutional objection on your objection because it makes it easier for higher courts to review it because there's a constitutional argument. So because of that, I'd really be shocked. I mean, think about it. It's a constitutional argument with one side saying the Constitution, the Congress has to do it. The other side saying the president has the authority to do it. That's the argument. You want us to process these payments before we make that decision on who can do what?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
That'd be crazy.
But see, Biden was saying under the 2003 HEROES Act that they could forgive debt under, a national emergency. Now, I give Biden a hard time sometimes because I feel like, did he really want to forgive the student loans? It is just like now, 14 months or so in, he wants to use this HEROES Act, but wouldn't it have been better if once he got in, we were under more of a national emergency then? So do you feel like Biden waited too long to use the HEROES Act to be able to forgive the student loans?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he definitely waited too long. And I think the reason he waited so long is, I don't know if you remember early on, he was like, "I'm having the Department of Justice and the Department of Education research to see if we can do this." And then we didn't hear about it for months. And I feel 100% confident that he was praying that they came back saying that he couldn't do it. Because if they would have said, "You can't do this, Mr. President," he would have came out immediately and said, "Oh, they told me I can't do it." Right. But because he didn't come out and say it, I was like, "Oh, they told him that he can do it." But with these things, it all depends on who's hearing the case and how it's going to be interpreted. I've seen some laws get interpreted in really weird, unique ways. So it's just a matter of what the court thinks. And, the court is a little bit more conservative than liberal. So,
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when I did that first video and I was stating when the first 6 states had filed their lawsuits, but they had got dismissed, and I was like, Biden probably was saying, go ahead and file the lawsuits, even though I know, 100% for sure he didn't do that. But, I was giving him a hard time because I was just like, he really didn't want this to go down because I'm just like, once he had got elected, towards the end of his campaign, I feel like that's when he had jumped on stating that, okay, I'll forgive 10,000 in student loan debt once I get elected. So that's what he said. But then it seemed like it was kind of quiet. And then, extending the no student loan payments and interest, he kept doing it maybe like 6 months, even though I felt like he should have just went ahead and did it for the rest of the year.
Right.
And then once they finally had created the plan stating that by, when was it? October, they were going to have the application. And then November the 15th, that's when they were going to start approving people. And then you would know whether or not the student loans were going to be forgiven. And then all these lawsuits came down. And so I'm just like, he really, didn't want to do it. And
like,
so
yes.
What was that?
He was like, yes, when those lawsuits came.
Exactly. He was like, yes. But I'm just like, I'm wondering why was it until October when it seems like everybody was just jumping on board to put in all these lawsuits, because it seems like lawsuits were coming from everywhere. So why do you think that was the case?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, no matter when he would have done it, he could have done it the first 2 weeks of his presidency. The lawsuits were just going to fly as a matter of course. A
Mhm.
lot of these lawsuits that are filed, even the ones that are ridiculously frivolous, they
Right.
just have so much funding from conservative think tanks to file all this paperwork to hire all the attorneys. So no matter when he did it, the lawsuits would have came. But I think your original point was, had he done it earlier, it would have been a little bit more credible to say, hey, the Heroes Act, because this is a state of an emergency, look at these pandemic numbers. Now we're at a point where is vaccines and everybody is kind of getting back to normal. People
Mhm.
are no longer, people move 2 hours away from their job. Now they're being told they got to go back to work. So
Wow.
it's really no, for all essential purposes, we're probably about 80 to 85% back to normal, and it's only going to get more of what it was before the pandemic happened.
Mhm. Yeah, we're gonna have to see. So I was surprised to see that article where he had went to the Senate, because right before then I had saw the article where it was stating that Biden's department was stating that they are considering extending the no student loan payment and no interest. So that's because originally when I had made this live, that's what I really wanted to talk about, because I was thinking with all the lawsuits happening and then them saying that this is possibly illegal, what do we think is going to happen? And then now, once it came out stating that they are considering it, I'm thinking, okay, Biden, what are you going to do? Are you going to do it, extend it to maybe a few months, or are you going to go ahead and extend it a whole year? I think
Right.
he should probably do it for the whole 2023. But what are your thoughts on this? Because I know in one of your last shorts, you were stating that you have maybe 7 points on why
Right.
you think it's going to happen. But give us
Right.
maybe like 1 or 2 points on why you think this is going to happen.
Okay, well, I think the biggest 3 points why I think this is going to happen is because, one, just from a political standpoint, his party just lost control of the House. You know what I mean? And we're speeding forward to a presidential election. And one of the promises you made, even though you were half, what on it, was to do something with student loan relief. So
Right.
until you do some type of forgiveness, you
Mm-hmm.
have to do nothing. I think it's just going to be too much pressure from his party. And I think it just doesn't make sense, even though we're not in a pandemic. We're in something that's probably equally bad, a recession. Interest rates and inflation are at all-time highs. The cost
Mm-hmm.
of living is up. So right now, people who were paying student loans in 2019 were in a better position than they will be whenever they have to start repaying, because the cost of things were at least cheaper in 2019. So I
But
think
do you
that's
think
what.
so? Do you think, because with I was reading somewhere within the last 24 months, they're stating that people have really been paying down debt. So with that
Mhm.
being the case, since we don't have, that much debt, do you think people would be ready to pay on their student loans?
I think generally, I'm probably going to say no. I did see something to that effect, and the percentage of people who continue to make student loan payments, it was relatively low. It wasn't. I know when I saw it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It was. I think it was somewhere maybe 20 something percent, but it wasn't like a 60, 70% of people who were still making payments. And so the question is, I think it's going to be a little bit challenging because the cost of everything went up, but also how you got to think 70% of people live paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were making student loan payments as an average person, as one of those 70% of people, if I'm not making payments, did I use that extra money to eliminate some of my other payments? Did I get some more obligations? Because at one point, maybe early in the pandemic, loans were cheap. You can get a 2% car loan.
Oh
So
man,
the question is,
exactly. That's
the,
what I'm
the
saying.
question is going to be: did the people who haven't been paying student loan, what have you done with your financial situation over the past 24 to 30 months? If you did something that moves you in the right direction, you might be okay. If you've been sticking to the norm or you acquired new debt, you're gonna be in trouble.
Right. Because talking about those interest rates, because in 2020, I had got my car, and car interest rates at that time, I had got like 2.19%
Right.
interest. And that was on a 60-month loan. And now for a 60-month loan, the interest rates are like almost 5%. Now you can almost have a car loan for what, 84, maybe even
Yeah, something
96
crazy.
months. And I'm just like, whoa, that's crazy. But I think interest rates maybe start at about 5 or 6%. And that's
Hmm.
probably going to be at a credit union. Now, if you go to the bank, it's probably going to be way more than that,
Right,
depending
right,
on what
right.
your credit score is. So with interest rates being so high right now, even just on credit cards, and then rent and mortgages are going up, I can definitely see your point on that.
Right. So I think that's the first point. I think the second point is, I mean, let's just be honest. Now that our former president has threw his name back into the hat for consideration, I I think some type of student loan extension is going to be necessary. Whoever's the first person to make people start repaying their student loans without any forgiveness happen, it they're going to catch a political punch in the gut from the voters. And let's just be honest. If we think about student loan repayment or forgiveness, is unequivocal, and people are going to hate that I say this, but you got to point out the good stuff that people did. Donald Trump has done more towards people repaying their student loans than President Biden, because a lot of people are unaware. In 2019, in the pandemic relief bill, there was a provision in there that a 529, I can open a 529 and name myself as the beneficiary. So a 529, the beneficiary doesn't have to be a child. It could be anybody who's doing anything for education. And
Mm,
in this 2019 bill that got passed, there was a provision in there that allowed me to open a 529, contribute $10,000 to that 529, use that $10,000 of that 529 to actually pay towards my student loan. Now,
mm,
from tax purposes, depending on the state where you live in, like the state where I'm at, I can write off 8,000 of that 10,000 that I paid towards my student loan. So it's a really big benefit, and so I think he has to extend it until something gets done with forgiveness. Because right now, I mean, if we're looking at who did what to help people pay anything, the numbers aren't in his favor.
okay, I can see that. Okay, so what was your third?
And the third reason I think he's going to do it, and I saw this in an article when I was going through my points. Um, it's funny because the people who service these loans
Mm,
are never prepared to do it. And I don't think, like, when the government shut down, the shutting down is easy. When there's we didn't come up with a bill, shutting down something is easy. Restarting it is so difficult because you got to think these companies have probably reduced their staff because they weren't collecting the interest that would have
right.
been profits for them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they reduced their staff. They may not
Hmm.
have the staff to deal with the volume of paperwork and the repayments and the processing, and they might not even be able to bring on the new staff with salaries and inflations and things like that. So I think that services just aren't prepared to to start making payments and doing that whole process in January.
Hmm. I totally agree with that, because it seems like, like Navient, they had that big lawsuit and they ended up moving our student loans to another servicer.
Yeah, yeah,
And I feel like, even though I want some portion of my student loans to be forgiven, I really don't think that that's going to be the best course of action. That's how I feel, because people are still getting student loans. So I think that's just a band-aid.
exactly.
That's how I feel. So I really think that we should tackle the interest. But the student loan servicers, they're not going to want to hear that. They don't want to
Hmm.
even talk about forgiving, not doing the interest. Because I feel like my student loan interest, I want to say, is about 6.24 or 6.25%.
Yeah, yeah,
And with not having the interest, I can definitely see it's going down compared to before. It just seemed like it was never moving. So I think that that would be the best course of action. But I never hear Biden using that as like a plan B.
right,
He really, his only one plan, even though I really don't think it's a plan that he wants to happen,
right.
is to forgive maybe the 10,000. But what do you think are some better alternatives than just forgiving the 10 to 20,000?
Yeah, I'll tell you on his face, if you qualify for forgiveness, go ahead and get it. But I think you were 100% right. For the 26 million people who applied to have their loans forgiven, 50 million new people probably took out loans that they can't afford. So the problem is the cost of education outside of the, more so than the actual loans.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, we we may disagree on this, but I never bought into the argument of, oh, if people get this amount forgiven, then they'll be able to buy houses and do
Yeah.
all this stuff. Like, if you haven't had to make payments in almost 3 years, did you get your
Mhm.
house yet? Like, no. So like,
Right.
so I do think an alternative is to attack the interest. Like you said, those companies make profits off the interest, so they'll never. I think that's something that they'll have their lawyers. They'll pay millions of dollars to have lawyers argue against
Yeah.
that. I think something that could be reasonable would to just implement a payment freeze for a set period of time. Let's
Mm.
say 24 months. Let's say, oh, we're going to have an interest freeze, or we're going to have a payment freeze for the next 12 months. After that, for the remaining 12 months, we're going to continue to have a 0% interest freeze.
Mm.
After that 24-month period, what they should consider is we're going to set a statutory, because it's a federal government loan. You can set a statutorily limit for the interest rate. Interest can be no higher than 2.5%.
Ooh, that would be great.
If you set that interest at 2.5%, then more of that money is going to the principal, and people will be in a position to make more progress. So
Mhm.
I think that would be a good outcome. And I think the last thing I got is, I always been a proponent of, and you probably heard me say this a bunch of times, if you're relying on the government to do anything to change your financial situation, shame on you. I think this student loan pause is the biggest
More coming
thing.
up. Yeah.
It's the
Mhm.
biggest thing that the government is ever going to do in my lifetime to help anybody get ahead. So
Mhm.
I could care less if I paid my loans off tomorrow and they forgave all the loans and I didn't get my money back. I wouldn't care. So I kind of, because even with the public interest loans, it could go away depending on who's in power, who's making laws, and who changes things.
Mhm.
And I don't like having that held over my head. So that's just my view: is make the progress you can make if you can make progress. Yeah, some people got, if you got $300,000 in loans and you make $50,000 being a teacher, you keep being a teacher and pray that that student loan public interest
Yeah.
program
Yeah.
stays in place.
Mhm.
If you can make progress, just make the progress and stop pocket watching the government, because they terrible with their finances. So
Right. Now, talking about the public service forgiveness, now it did seem like they forgave a lot of those loans. And so at first I was kind of thinking, well, maybe they're pushing the federal student loans back while they still forgive those, because I think they had until October the 31st to get
mhm.
those forgiven. So I'm all for that. But with the federal student loans, I'm kind of like you. I don't necessarily, I'll pay back my student loans. Even once 2020 had happened, I had continued to pay my student loans up until probably October or November of 2020. And then I just kind of transitioned into paying my car off.
Mhm,
And,
mhm.
then once I did that, I'm not going to lie, I was kind of slowing around because I was like, I was going to create a plan to start paying off my student loans. I was just like, ooh, I
Right.
don't know. It's just like, I don't know why I didn't want to just tackle it like I did my car. I just tackled that like so quick in 1 year. But with my student loans, I was just kind of slowing around with it. But I can definitely hear what you're saying on them not having the interest. Like that's been the biggest thing that they've
Right.
done. And that's why I was saying, even if they started making us pay the student loans back in January, I don't know that I would be opposed to it, but I would like for them to continue to extend the no interest. Now that I
Right.
would be okay with, but if they're going to extend the no payment and no interest past, I was saying until December, I'm like, Biden, if you're listening to this, Biden, if you're listening to this, don't just do no 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
You see
corny.
what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Like go ahead
Yeah.
and extend it till the end of 2024.
Right, right, right. I
2023.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think the reason is because, when you're paying that car off, is like a tangible thing that you
Right.
use every day.
Mhm.
So you see it, and when you drive a paid off car, because it's paid off and you actually sitting in it, it feels so good to not have that note coming or see that
It
$400 or
does.
$500 go out. But with the student loan, you know it's there, and like me, I get a benefit. I can't do my job if I didn't have a student loan, but it's not something that is like tangible that I can touch. So it makes it a little bit harder, because I had a thought of, I was like, I'm just gonna stash the money up, and right before they tell us pay it back, I was gonna pay one lump sum. And I said, man, I'm not gonna do that. I just start sending payments, because I know if I had that lump sum sitting over there, I'm gonna look in that bank account and see $30,000 or $40,000 sitting there, and I'm not going to want to put it on this student loan.
Because see, you have to tell us, because I know on one of your community tab posts. So tell us where you and your wife had started on your student loans, and where are you now?
Okay, so on that student loans, the first year in 2020, because we didn't have to make any payments because everything was just kind of frozen and paused, we paid off everything else. So we paid off 2 cars, we paid off credit cards and a TSP loan, all this other crazy stuff we had. In February of 2021, we were at a point where the only thing we had was student loans. Mine was $109,000 and hers is $130,000. Right now, mine is about $38,000. So we made a lot of progress on it. We have pulled back, because I mean, we were sending, it was crazy what we were sending. Probably like between $3,000 to $3,400 a month, depending on how the budget, if something crazy came up. But I will tell you, in the past 6 months, we've kind of cut back on what we were actually paying off, because instead of sending that same amount, we cut it in half, and now we're just putting a little bit more money in our savings account. Now, we do have a fully funded emergency fund, but I was like, right now, I want to be a little bit cash heavy just in case. So that's kind of the plan that we've been going with for now.
Wow. Because I know in that post you were talking about, did you guys want to start paying back your wife's student loans or put the money aside? And so y'all decided that, you're saying that y'all are stashing some of the money right now, opposed to and just sending in half of the payment.
Right. But because the thought was, and this was kind of the thought process. The question stemmed because we was like, man, once student loan repayments start, that's when we're going to be kind of like, what's the best position to go to? So the first option was, now we got this $30,000 loan and a $130,000 loan. The first option is just pay the minimum on hers, throw everything else at mine. Another option, which would allow us to pay mine off faster. And for me, I like seeing the loan go to zero. That has some value. So the other option was just pause the payments on hers and only pay the interest that accrues, and then pay everything else towards mine. And that would allow me to get rid of mine in like 3 to 4 months, maybe 4 or 5 months on the long end. And so we had these kind of options that we were thinking about. Right now, we said, let's just be cash heavy, just because economic times are crazy. And whenever this thing finally comes to an end, we can make a decision on, do we want to take that half a payment we were setting aside and just throw it all at it, or what do we want to do?
Now we got a comment. Let me see. First Gen, he was stating, the way the courts are ran, student loan forgiveness will be in effect until 3005. What's going on, First Gen? And then he put Alexa play Childish Gambino 3005. I'm gonna have to listen to that song. I
mean, he got a point, man. I mean, let's just take a look at the court's decision. And I remember, and I explained this literally in my last video, because I was breaking down somebody who gave some terrible illegal advice on one of your favorite finance podcasts. But how courts work, even if it's a state or a federal court, if me and you are in court arguing over something, I got to go find cases that are similar where the court's ruled in my favor. You're going to go find cases where the facts are kind of the same and the court ruled in your favor. And then you put it in front of the court. Well, if there's already a precedent, if a previous court has said, this is how we rule in this facts, if those go favorable towards me, I win, because that's the precedent. And I remember when I was in law school, I asked, they was like, the courts have to follow precedent. And my first question was, I was like, do they? She was like, yeah. I said, where does it say that in the law? She was like, that's just what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, Roe v. Wade happened. There was a precedent set. And what did the Supreme Court do? They said, nope, we're going to create a new precedent. What's before the court right now that affects probably everybody who's watching this? Affirmative action. There's a good chance that affirmative action, which is terrible because some of the people on the court use affirmative action to get on the court, but affirmative action is probably about to go away too. So, just with the makeup, the way this court is makeup, they are really conservative leaning. So it's a strong possibility if this argument goes before the court, I would be shocked if the court came back and said, yes, this act allows this to happen under these circumstances.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like, even though on the one hand, I'm just like, okay, I would love for some of my student loans to be forgiven. It's really like this much. It's a slim, very slim, even in my mind, thinking that it's going to be approved. So that's why I'm just like, Biden, just be honest.
Right.
You didn't want to forgive the student loans anyway. So just go to another plan and make that happen.
Right. And that's the thing. If he just said, look, this forgiveness thing is going to be too problematic. Y'all don't got to make no payments until after the next presidential election. I'm cool with that. I'd be cool with that. But it's one of those things where I think he's stuck between kind of a rock and a hard place now, because what's going to happen is if he doesn't come through and
he got to come. See, that's my thing. He has to come through with something.
Right. I think he has to come through with some type of forgiveness. Honestly, anything short of a forgiveness, I already know. We're not talking about our former president's role as president. We're just talking about him. He knows how to say things to get people riled up and to get people excited. I actually listened to his speech when he said, I'm running for office. And when he said, hey, I think we should have term limits for senators. I think that senators shouldn't be allowed to invest in things that they're making decision on. Now, do he actually believe that? No, but he knows how to say things that trigger with people. Mm-hmm. If Biden doesn't get any forgiveness coming through, I already know the first thing that's going to come out of his mouth is, you promised all these people forgiveness and you didn't get it done.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be the first thing.
Right. That's gonna be the first thing. So I think he has a really tough uphill battle to get it done. But anything short of forgiveness is going to be a failure, because what has he done that he said he was going to do? The pandemic relief bill, anybody could have got that passed because it was a pandemic. You needed money, you needed resources. So, he didn't get the Build Back Better thing done. They gutted it. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I think if the Republicans are smart, they could use this to their advantage. And I'm telling you right now, if they start arguing, hey, we'll get student loan forgiven X amount and we'll get it done through Congress, you got millions of people who might poke up their ears and be like, what y'all talking about over there?
Exactly. So we got Budgeting Just Because said hello and then stated that is so true.
Yeah.
Facts all the way.
Yeah, it's they have to do something. And that was my problem. And the only money the government has is what they take from us, in taxes. So my whole thing was, I'm fine and I don't really care about student loan forgiveness, but I feel like is a 3-pronged approach. You had to forgive student loans, and you also had to address the cost of education. The cost of education rises at a rate way higher than inflation. It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Doesn't make any sense. So
but I do think that they're kind of tackling that, because you have you can go to some of the community college and you can go for 2 years and get that paid for, and then go to a 4-year university. So I feel like kind of on the front end they are working that, but since we have $1.7 trillion in student loan debt already for 45 million Americans, it's just like, what can we do? But then people start saying, okay, yeah, we have $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, but now auto loan debt is creeping up.
Yeah, I saw that. Credit card debt.
Other debts are creeping up.
Yeah, credit card debt. I just saw an
Credit
article as
card debt
well.
to creeping up.
Yeah. So let me ask let me ask your thoughts, because you know the cost of school is a problem. Do you think that the student loan program itself, given, because you know sometimes things that are created to help people, they end up harming people, you know, and one of
Mhm.
the examples I use is, you know, aid that the United States send to war-torn countries in Africa. That aid that they dropping off via airmail, and it was designed to help people, but it actually creates a bigger problem, because what happens is, as soon as they drop those resources, what happened? You got warlords and people fighting and catching those resources. It creates a much bigger problem, even though it was designed to help. Student
Mhm.
loans were designed to help people who couldn't afford it, people, minorities, and first generation students to go to college. So, do you think that the student loan program itself is the cost of college being so high? Because student loans is the only loan you can get where you
Mhm.
qualifying for the loan is
Mhm.
based on your inability to pay it back. Any other loan you get, they be like, "Can you pay us back?"
Right.
Student loans, they say you can't afford this, so we're going to give it to you. So, do you think
Mhm.
that kind of that blank check that schools know students get is the
Yeah.
reason that they're just jacking their price up so high?
Yeah, I think so. Totally. Because that's definitely what I was going to say. Because I'm just like, what loan? You couldn't even go get like a business loan. Like an 18-year-old cannot go get a business loan for $50,000
Right.
without getting their parents cosign and all this other things. But then you can go get a student loan. You don't have to. They're not checking your credit or anything unless you're going to get private student loans. But for the federal student loans, anybody can get the student loans, and it doesn't matter if you can pay it back or not. So I
Right.
definitely think that probably something needs to happen with that. But it's like on the one hand, since I was able to get my student loans, but I don't mind paying my student loans back,
Right. Right.
on the one hand. But then, when you have people just going out here and racking up all this student loan debt. And see, the thing is, just because you get all this student loan debt, it doesn't even mean that you graduate. So that makes it even
Right.
worse. You see
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
then if you're not getting the job that's making a lot of money, so it really just creates a lot of problem, because some of these students, they'll get the student loans, and it depends on, okay, what kind of background that they come from. So they're using it for housing. Sometimes they're
Yeah.
using it to help their families.
Yeah.
So
Buying
it's just,
cars.
yeah, and even on that side, they might be doing bad things with it. But I would say, I don't know, I guess, I don't know that I would say 50-50, but I would say for the most part, I would think people are not just going so hard and doing the wrong things with the student loans, but that possibly they could be helping their family. They're using it to pay for their rent and food, but
Right.
then they're doing other things with it. But I think a overhaul definitely needs to happen with how much you can get for the student loans. But then I'm always going to go back to the interest, because that's where it's at.
Right.
Because the thing
Right.
is, when you're in school, you're getting all the student loan debt, and then they're adding interest on it. But then once you get out, they're still going to add the interest on those
Yeah.
unsubsidized loans. But then every month after that, they're still adding interest on it as well. So most of the time, you'll probably be able to pay it back a lot faster if you didn't have all these interests coming back on
Right.
the loans, and it's just inflating it even more.
Yeah, I agree. I saw an article once. I was thinking about doing a video on. There was a guy who was a doctor, and this guy made about 200 and something $1,000 a year. He made a lot. That's a lot of damn
Mhm.
money for one
Yeah.
person to make,
Mhm.
200 and something $1,000 a year, and he couldn't make a dent in his student loans because he had about, it was maybe $600,000 in student loan between medical school and going to a private institution in
Right.
undergrad, and he just had to live with the fact, like, even when he made the minimum payment, his student loan would be more the next month because the interest, like, he just couldn't even put a dent in it. And so I definitely agree with you. And I think is I don't think a lot of people understand how challenging it is. Because I'm gonna be honest, this may sound crazy, but I'm like, if it were up to me, okay, somebody like you, somebody who graduated from school, has been productive in the workforce. I don't care what type of job you had, but if you graduated and you've been working a job, consistently paying taxes for 5, 10, whatever years, I can wrap my mind around, let's forgive that person because they did what they needed to do. But somewhere out there, there's a person who went to school, didn't do anything, took out loans for 5 or 6 years, didn't graduate, like, but he qualifies for forgiveness. Do we really need to pay that guy's loan off?
I don't know, because I'm gonna say, that's where I'm kind of still going back to say what kind of happened, because you got to think, even within, let's say, the 2008, 2009 crisis, the 2019, even now, those individuals had an intent to be able to go and be productive, get them a good job, making good money, and then when they come out, they're not able to find these jobs, and then they end up working these jobs, and then the interest and it's still growing and things like that. So then it kind of appears on the surface that maybe they weren't doing right, but then all these other things was happening to where they're not able to pay the student loan debt down because they're not making enough, and then rent, and then car loans and food with the inflation of everything. So they're not able to afford it. So most of the time, the thing that people are going to leave last is going to be the student loans, and then they're just going to live.
Right. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair. It always comes to me because, I can remember I had a really weird, unconventional ass approach to getting to law school. I went to college for 2 years. Then I was like, man, I need to get some money for school. Then I went to the military for 4 years. Then after I got out of the military, I went back to the same college to finish up. So keep in mind, 6 years went by from the time I started college and the time I went to the military and went to war and did everything. When I got back to that school after 6 years, the same damn people who started with me were still there. I was like, what the hell are y'all doing? I was like, so I understand people who have certain circumstances. Or, and one dope idea I thought about was, what if you forgave somebody's student loan based on the financial progress that they may have made or may have not made over this period where student loans were paused. So let's say, okay, you had it. If I looked at, hey, if you want to qualify for student loan payments, we want to see how you've been managing your finances over this past 24 months.
You got me there, but hold on. So we got Wolverine 1782 said you don't deserve that. And then he said it in my JT voice. So I already know he's talking about pocket watching. Because you're gonna say you don't deserve it.
Hey, I'm just saying, I know some households of attorneys who make $249,000 and they get $10,000 to $20,000, $40,000 of student loan forgiveness. Do they really need it? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm saying if it, here is the criteria. If you fall in that criteria, I think you should be able to get it.
Yeah.
I do also think, kind of where you were going, I really agree that I feel like they should put a clause in there stating like you have to go to some kind of class on paying debt off or, getting your money straight to be able to get approved for this. Like we need to see some progression to where you're not going to be racking up a whole lot of debt and things like that after.
Yeah.
So that it's not going to be a waste.
Right. Yeah, there are creative ways you can incentivize it. You can say, hey, for everybody fill out their application, and based on the numbers, you can say, hey, for you qualify for an extra 12 months of having your payments frozen, and we'll reevaluate you at the end of the 12 months for forgiveness if you've made substantial financial progress. That could be paying off some of your other consumer debt, your cars, your credit cards, those type of things. I mean, the problem when you're doing something like this, really, if you really want to do student loan forgiveness, you should just give it to everybody and don't put any conditions on it. Because once you start putting conditions, you're going to be like, let's drug test them.
I know. Do that too. Right. I'm going to say that.
if you smoking weed, you can't get it. Like it's gonna get once you start
But
going
look,
down this
Kamar,
hole.
Kamar said you're totally right. I think he's saying on that, but I totally think so. I think that they should
Right.
because even now, let me know. Even in like bankruptcy court, do they make people take those classes in bankruptcy court?
Yeah,
Those
they
like,
have, and
yeah,
yeah,
so that's
yeah,
what I'm
there's
saying.
some mandatory courses.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So it's mandatory because I think overall it would just help everybody to get that financial education to where, as a whole, we can just get better with our money to where people won't need to get so much help with everything.
yeah. It's tough. I understand both sides because you know courts and legislators who make laws, they're always cautious of we don't want to open the floodgates. And I get that argument too. Like, okay, today is student loans. What's the next crisis going to
Yeah.
be? Are everybody going to want their credit cards wiped out because they made bad decisions with their credit cards? So
Yeah, because it probably would be credit cards. Because I'm trying to think if it was credit cards or auto loans, but it was probably going to be one of those. But then I
yeah.
also kind of thinking about other kind of debt. I do think that they should tackle the consumer protections around student loans as well. So I feel like pretty much all areas of the student loans needs kind of like an overhaul. We really need
Mhm.
to take a look at it from kind of like the beginning to end. So on the beginning front, how the cost of education, how does that weigh out? Then two,
Right.
on the student loans, when you're getting a student loan, what kind of, does it need to be a credit score? But most of the time, an 18 is not going to be a credit score. And I don't think that they should let people co-sign for credit for. I don't think they should let people co-sign for loans. Don't do that. So I
Yeah.
don't know what kind of things that they could put in place for the student loans on the beginning hand because you just never know. Because
I mean, I think that a really dope plan, and they do this in some countries overseas in Europe, where what you pay is based on your grades. Okay, you want to go to school? Here, if you
look,
get
but I
if you
don't
get
know. No, no.
if you get if after your first year you have a B average, we'll pay
Okay.
80% of it. If after your first year if you got a D average, nah, we don't pay for D's, bro. You're gonna have to
Mm-mm.
sign this loan paperwork and figure it out on your own. Like I would
But
actually
see,
be
but
content
then,
with
but
that.
see, that's what I'm saying. So then you're opening up a whole nother can of things because I would probably say that that's why I really liked going to the community college because, like, when I was at the community college, I did really, really well because basically you're really just jumping into your major courses. And so I did really good. But then once I had went to the 4-year college and then they're making you take those chemistries and
Right, right,
science and
right.
all that kind of stuff, it was just like, woo, by the time I was done, I was just like, I barely almost kind of made it up.
Right, right,
But I
right.
still
Yeah,
finished. You see what I'm saying?
that's a fair point. I tell you, I was focused in school, and I graduated with like honors, law school, all that. And the only reason I did it is because I signed my name on those loan documents. And I remember my homegirl came to me and was like, let's skip class. And I had the math broken down. I said, man, I ain't skipping class. That's $532.65 for every class I
Oh my
missed. She,
goodness.
she looked at me like I was crazy, but I felt the pressure of like, man, I signed these loan documents. That was one reason I finished. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
enjoy law school. After that
Yeah.
first year, I was like, law school sucked. But I had already signed those loan documents. I was like, oh man, let me go ahead and finish because I don't want to
Mhm.
have to start repaying them and not have a degree. That'd be
Yeah.
terrible. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
so that's what I'm saying. Thinking about the student loans and coming up with all these other alternate plans. Because I feel like if you finish, that's the good thing. But then the thing is, just because you finish, it doesn't mean that you're gonna get a high paying job.
right,
You see what I'm
right, right.
saying? So,
I think that's a risk though that I think that's a risk that I don't like school put this data of we got this many people employed and this man. I think that's a risk on the student because like somebody say, man, you're an art history major. Somewhere out there, there's probably an art history major who's the head of a national museum making a lot of money, and
yeah,
there's another one out there who are dusting off dinosaur bones at the museum. You know what I mean? So I, I,
right.
I think as a student, you just kind of like my son knows, and this sounds crazy, like you're going to a school that we can afford, and if we can't afford it, you got to figure out. If you want to go somewhere that we can't afford, you got to figure out how you're going to pay for it. And there's a general list of majors that if my son come to me saying I want to major in this, I'm a side out. I'm like, what? You want
Really?
No, because I want him to have something that he can put himself in a position to where, okay, if I leave out with this degree, there's a whole list of like top 10 degrees that are going to be worthless in the next 5 years. And my criminal justice degree was something that was on the list. But my teachers kept it real. The minute I picked that major, my teachers was like, if you want to do anything in this degree, you need to get a master's, a PhD, or go to law school. Otherwise, you're going to be at a jail breaking up fights in the showers doing corrections. And I was like, that don't sound fun.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all. Let's see. We got Wealth Talk Productions in the house. What's going on? How are you doing? I haven't seen you around. But yeah, but I would say we're going to have to see what's going to go on. You know, Biden and his team has went to the Supreme Court and they're asking to let the 16 million Americans that were approved for the student loan forgiveness. But I want to know, let me know in the comments, did you get an email or something stating that they have been approved? Because where did this come from? Because I haven't seen anybody say that they're that they was approved.
Right.
But we need to see, where is that at? And then but you know, just like you said, the Supreme Court probably is not gonna let them go ahead and forgive those 16 million.
So let me ask a couple questions, and we're gonna have this extra video so we can come back. Okay. So the first question is, do you think that Biden is going to extend the payment pause if this didn't go? Is that yes or no? Yes.
Yes, I think so. I definitely think so. 100%.
Okay. So now the over under, is it under 4 months or is it going to be over 4 months?
Well, with Biden, it's going to be under 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think he's going to go over 4 months. I think
he's going to go over 4 months.
I think he's going to go 6 months because I just really think the election changes things, and I wouldn't want to worry about this every 3 months when I got a whole bunch of. I mean, when I got all these investigations that's going to come up with people looking at my son, he's going to have a much bigger stuff to worry about now that they don't have control of the house. So I could see him potentially kicking it down for 6 months or something like that. I wouldn't be shocked.
I mean, I can give you that 4 or 6 months. But I think I feel like it should just be go ahead and do it for 2023. But I feel like he's going to do less than 6 months.
All right. And do you, so we got your ideas on those. Do you think that the actual forgiveness will happen prior to the presidential election occurring? Yes or no?
No.
Damn, girl, you ain't optimistic at all, sis.
No, I don't think so. What do you think?
I hate to say it, but I agree with you.
Right.
I hate to say it, but I agree with you. I don't think it's gonna happen.
I don't know, because it's like, I'm kind of hard on Biden in a way, because I didn't think that he was gonna do anything. I didn't think that he was gonna forgive it. And then in October, when the plan actually came out, I was like, okay, Biden, you got my ear. I'm hearing what you're saying. So I might give you a little, okay. But then all the lawsuits and things started happening. And I'm just like, well, why didn't he have a plan B or something else? And, he's just being really quiet about it. So I was just like, I really still feel like he doesn't want to forgive, but I think he will go ahead and extend the no student loan and no interest. And I maybe could see him being kind of pushed. I think he will go ahead and do it for a whole year because he really needs to do something. That's the only reason I would consider that he would go ahead, because I don't think that he wants to forgive any amount.
And let me ask, this is the last kind of question I got. I'm gonna come back and watch this video as these answers unfold. Okay, so you don't think student loan forgiveness is going to happen, right? you think he's going to extend it at some point.
Yeah, I think he's going to extend it.
Do you think so? So let's assume that forgiveness doesn't happen. We know he's going to extend it for however long.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think when student loan payments resume in general, will it be under this presidential term or under the next presidential term? I honestly think, for me, this sounds crazy. If the forgiveness doesn't pan out in court, which I don't think it'll do, I can honestly see nothing happen on student loan pay. I can see this pause going all the way through until election day. Now, the day after the election, things will change, but I can see it going all the way through if nothing happens on the forgiveness.
What did First Gen say? The way these courts are ran, student loan forgiveness will be effective in 3005. You know, I'm usually a very optimistic person, I feel. And of course, I want some of my student loans to be forgiven. But
you have to be a corporation.
Yeah, he says. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that Biden, I don't know. I just don't feel. Now he will surprise me. I think he'll surprise me. But I don't think that. I think it's just going to be extended, and I just hope that it's extended for the full year. Or I feel like even if they start making us pay back the student loans and then just extend the no interest, I think I can deal with that too.
Right. Nope.
I can see that as an option.
Nope.
But I would say more people would probably say, don't start back the payments. I would probably say more people would say that than the interest.
If I have to start repaying my student loans, I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna stand at that election booth a long time because I'm gonna be thinking about things. The first person who make me have to repay their student loans, it's gonna be I'm gonna have a difficult time checking that checkbox for you.
I know. And so we had 5280 Cinema Group TV said extend to what? It's unconstitutional.
Oh, yeah. I don't think the extension. I don't think the extension is unconstitutional.
Because I really don't think that. On the one hand, even though I don't know that they want to, of course they're going to fight back on the extension. But I think for the forgiveness, that's like a no.
Yeah.
You know, that's like a no. But extending the no student loan payments or no interest, I can see them being a little bit more soft on that.
Yeah.
To where, okay, go ahead and do that, but for how much longer?
Yeah, I actually I don't know if I did a short, but it was about an indefinite student loan payment pause. Is that something that's actually possible? And I was like, yeah, because both presidents, Republican and Democrat, have extended student loans using an executive order. Right. So you there's no way you can challenge the constitutionality of an extension because both sides have took advantage of it. And so I said, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I don't think the extension. I mean, if somebody wanted to extend it for their whole presidential term, they could do that, and I don't think you would get any real arguments about it.
Yeah, because I think pretty much that's what Biden should do. You know, on this hand right now, pretty much the whole time he's been in term, no payments or interest.
Right.
So just go ahead and extend it for the whole term.
Just make that a promise. If anytime we got a Democratic president, we're gonna do a pause of the student loan payment and interest. Man, if they make that a promise, they get a lot of votes.
That's what I'm saying. Biden needs to hear this and go ahead and do that because I think that's what he would want to do. And then he doesn't have to bring it up anymore. The student loan forgiveness plan. Just go ahead and extend a no student loan, no interest for the rest of his term, and then let that be somebody else's.
Yeah, kick it down the road and let somebody else eat that problem.
Okay, so here, this is what Wolverine 1782. He feels like me. Biden did not want to do the student loan forgiveness in the first place. I feel like everybody, well, I guess everybody didn't know that, but I think they should have. If it wasn't for the midterms, it would still be a bullet point.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna help this get to Biden. I'm gonna wait till the Christmas tree lighting at the White House, and I'm gonna ride past the White House bumping this video.
Right. Hold on, let me see. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He's probably happy about this holdup.
I
Exactly.
agree.
That's what I've been saying the whole time. He's happy about it because he did not want to forgive the student loans.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, let's just really think about this. If you open a loan servicing company and you make your money from people paying student loan interest, you have a valid legal argument that you are losing your income. You're losing your income. Your right to work and make a wage is being impacted by this. So I can understand that. I mean, just think if you had whatever your business was, if the government did something that wouldn't allow you to make a profit, you'd be very hot. You know what I mean? You'd be
I
very hot.
would. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but I still, it's just like with the interest on the student loans, I think that's the one part that I just hate about the student loans, the interest on the student loans. The
so
loan itself, I feel like I'm okay with the loan itself because I feel like, yes, if you got the student loans, you should pay it back. But I
right,
think the interest is what is ballooning
right.
this everybody's student loans.
So let me ask when student loan repayments start, whenever they decide to start. Because one thing I thought about was doing, because my interest rate is about 6 point something percent, the same as what you said yours was.
Mm-hmm.
Would you, let's say student loans repayment started in January,
Mm-hmm.
would you refinance your student loans to a private company if they can guarantee you a lower rate?
Well, okay, so that is a great question. So I bank with I bank with so I'm with the credit union, and they had sent me an email stating I could go ahead and refinance my student loans with them, and I think it was going to be like 2.1, and then especially if I did auto pay, they could
That's good.
guarantee me that. But see, they wanted you to do it prior to, Navy Federal wanted you to do it prior to December 31st, and they were going to give you $200. But see, the only thing is, I was just like, if I take my federal student loans and put it with the private, if by chance they were going to forgive student loans, I would be knocked out. So
Yeah.
it's just like, what do I do?
Right, right,
But
right.
since I really feel like they're not gonna forgive student loans until 3005. I'm just saying
Right.
until 3005. Would I go ahead? I don't know. I kind of thought about it because I
Yeah.
do want to tackle my student loans. So I owe 53,000 on my student loans, and I had paid off my auto loan. That was like 20,000. I did that in a whole year. So if I just really bit the bullet, I could probably pay it off maybe like in a year and a half.
Right.
And I was just like paying off that auto loan. It wasn't it wasn't easy all the time. And so it was just like that's why once I finished paying it off and then I was talking about going to my student loans, I was just like, I'm kind of burnt out a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
want to jump into it.
Right.
But I would totally rather have like a 2.1 interest rate than a 6.
Right. You know, it's funny. I looked into it, and when I was looking into it, this was before he extended it. So I was trying to do and get my plan together, and
Mhm.
before the Fed started raising interest rates, most of them that I saw, they all wanted variable interest rates. So they were like 2.2%, but it was variable. So
Mhm.
that kind of turned me off. And I tell you what, one of my options is. Actually, one of my homeboys told me about this. I think this is what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to put small portions of it. Like, let's say I had $50,000, or I got $30,000 remaining, right? If I got $30,000 remaining, if I can do a balance transfer on a credit card I got that's 0% interest,
Mhm.
I'll do a balance transfer for the amount that I know I could pay off before I have to start paying interest.
Now, that's a good point. And I've been talking about balance transfers, but I'm just like, woo, if you did a balance transfer, you would have to that balance transfer fee, if it was like 2%,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ooh, that
That's
would
why
just kind of eat it up.
my homeboy said that's why he did it in smaller increments.
Okay.
I would do a balance transfer for $5,000 because I know I could pay 5,000 in 6 months before the interest even start. and it wouldn't be too big of a fee. If you do it for like $20,000, you may not be able to pay it off before that interest kick in. Now you're looking at 20-something% interest. So he said every year his credit card company would offer a balance transfer. So he would just do a small portion of it to have 0% interest. And he still paid whatever the minimum was over here, but it made him be able to pay that extra off and get it out the way. And it worked out good for him. So I said that was also an option. You know, that's a little gamesmanship. And if you fumble that or mess it up, you may get kicked in. And you know what? Like, don't let an emergency or something come up and you can't satisfy it before that interest hit, because 22% interest on $5,000 ain't no joke.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you know, because with the videos that I had did in regards to doing a balance transfer, it's like you really want to have a plan on that balance transfer. You don't really want to be playing around. And so, you know, most of the time they have 12, 15, but one of those credit cards had 21 months of no
Oh,
interest
that's
on the
good.
balance
Man.
transfer. So I think that was pretty good. But look here, the Wolverine 1782 said if they and this is what I was going to bring up earlier, but I didn't. And they said if they can forgive those PPP loans, why not do the student loans? And I thought that was so funny when some of those Republicans, you know, they were talking all that stuff about the student loans, and then they were getting their PPP loans forgiven. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, but it goes back to the point that Wolverine made earlier. The advantages are made to go to corporations. That's just kind of the nature of
Yeah.
it. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
kind of the name of the game. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, you know, the government will do everything they can to bail out a corporation and
Yeah.
prop the stock market up, but
Yeah.
not so much for regular citizens. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good point.
That's a
Um,
very good point.
yeah, that was a really good point. But the other thing too is, you know, even though people like a lot of those politicians, yeah, they took advantage of it,
Mm-hmm.
but the people who got that stuff forgiven, they complied by whatever the rules were for that specific thing. So it's kind of a catch-22 because again, the people who stole PPP, we know who those guys are, but the people who did it and got it forgiven, there were a set of things that had to be done in order for them to qualify for that to get forgiven, or it would have still counted as a loan.
Mm-hmm. I
So
still, you know, I hear what you're saying, but it's just like, okay, you want your PPP loans to be forgiven, but then you're saying all this negative stuff because people want their student loans to be forgiven. How is it different?
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think is I look at them as I look at it as an apples and oranges thing. Now I think it's different, but I do think is they're being hypocrites. You know, if we
Yeah,
wanted
I
to say
feel
that,
like, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, of course it is
yeah,
different because you know you have one person with your student loans in your household, but with the PPP loans, they had their corporation that they were trying to keep under, and especially during that time, possibly they might have had to, you know, lay some people off or things like
employees
that. So
retention and
yeah, so
yeah,
you were able to keep those people on board. So, you know, yeah, I can see that. So that's what I'm saying. Yes, I can agree that you're just being a little bit of a hypocrite. That's how
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely agree that they they hypocrites big time, but that's just kind of
Mhm.
what the nature of the program was. I wish I'd have had DFD Creative Media up. I'd have had a PPP loan, a legit,
You put your kids,
a
you put
legit,
your kids on the
a
payroll.
legit PPP loan. Y'all wouldn't see me on Pocket Watcher about an attorney who defrauded the PPP loan.
That's funny. So Trina McDonald said, after the pandemic and the rise of interest rates, we need student loan forgiveness. Yes, that was one of the points. Oh, okay. Here's Wolverine. So he's diehard. He says, no, you took the loans out. You got to pay it back. You don't deserve that. Well, it's just like on the one hand, I've been saying the whole time, and even during the first part of it, I was still paying back my student loan. So I'm never opposed. And so that's where I say, even in the videos that I do, and even now, I've stated
Yeah,
I'm never opposed to. I'll pay my student loans back. I don't have a problem with it, and I don't have a problem if they go ahead and start making us pay back the student loans. But where I feel like since Biden stated once he got into office
he
that
said
he would give
it.
us 10,000 in student loan forgiveness as soon as I get in, and then it's been all these months and he hasn't done anything. I feel like that's kind of where I was at, that he should do what he said he was going to do. So that's kind of where I was riding Biden so hard.
Right.
He said that he was going to do it, so he needs to do what he said he was going to do. So that's number one.
Yeah.
But then number two, as I've been stating, even if you look in the description, I have my 5 things on what they should do with student loans. And even tonight, I've stated I don't necessarily think that forgiving 10 or 20,000. Now, I will take it. So you hear me correctly. I will take some of
Right.
my student loans to be forgiven. Of course, I will. But I don't think that that's going to be the best course of action. I really feel like they should tackle some of the interest on student loans, either not have interest on student loans or take it down to, 2% or something like that, without me having to refinance it through a private loan, to where possibly maybe in a couple of years, if they forgive student loans, I wouldn't be knocked out and they would
Right.
still be
Right.
federal student loans. Then I could see that, opposed to me having to reprocess it, because it's just like, I kind of would want to. But if I did that, I would create a plan, just like if I was going to, let's say, do with the credit cards. If I was going to do it that way and do, so I would have to do it that way, to where I had to create a plan, to where if I'm going to refinance it under, a private loan, I'm going to pay it off, within like a year or
Right. Right.
24 months or something like that. I wouldn't be sitting on it or something like that, because I don't know that I think that they would forgive student loans within 24 months. I don't
Right.
think
Right. Right.
so. That's what I'm saying. If I was going to refinance it, I would have to have a plan
To knock it out.
to go ahead
Yeah.
and knock it out and not be playing around with it. But then
Right.
just make sure, like, dang, would I be mad? I probably would be mad if I went ahead and paid them off, and then in 24 months, if they was to do something else, I think I would probably be mad. Let's see. Okay. So he said the government love giving breaks to corporation. Yeah. Yeah, because I said that even within them giving the stimulus checks and things like that. So they were only giving 1,200. What they ended up only giving 2,000, but the corporations, they were getting all the money.
Right.
But
Right.
everybody else was only getting, not really a whole lot. So
Yeah. And that's what I know. I actually did a video on that. I said, if you always want to get a stimulus, don't worry about what you qualify for. Invest in stocks. The minute that stimulus bill got approved, man, that $1,200 check everybody got, my stocks went up. I made way more than that. I could have sold 1 or 2 and pulled that off, because I mean, the point of a stimulus is people going to get it and go out and spend that money. And of course,
see,
the stock market.
Yeah, because see me, I was not simulating the market.
See, you're a different type of person. You're one of the people the government hate. When they give you a stimulus, don't be investing it and save it. You need to go out there and buy a boombox.
No, not going out here buying no sneakers or or anything like that. No, that's not what I'm gonna be doing with mine. So I'm not simulating the market with it.
Right. So it's going to be one person in the comments, and I understand all sides of the forgiveness argument. I understand it. The one side that drives me crazy, though, it is always every time I do a video, it's always like somebody who will leave a comment and they like talk about when they went to college, and back when college was like 32 cents. And I'd be like, bro, I don't even. I used to be embattled in the comments with these discussions. Now I'm just like, look, we just going to agree to disagree, because I've never been I don't understand the concept of, because I didn't get it, I don't want them to have it. That's the argument that doesn't make sense to me. Well, they didn't forgive my student loans, so why should they give yours? Okay, well, women ain't used to have the right to vote. So because they didn't have the right to vote, you mean women now shouldn't have the right to vote? That's the logic that people use. Because I didn't have something, you shouldn't have it too. I think that's the craziest argument, because you just pocket watching somebody else. Like, mind your business. You know what I mean? But that's just me.
Wolverine 1782 said, I got the new J's with that 12. Look, see, okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so it's okay to take the stimulus, but then on the same hand, you feel we should not forgive student loans or a portion of student loans.
Oh, because I mean, it's a proven study. 80% of the stimulus money is going back to the economy. So,
Yes,
you
it's
know,
gonna be.
that's the thing with the student loan. It's just evaporating. There's a bill that you, me, Wolverine, everybody. But that's the same. I know once me and Wolverine was having a conversation about California wanting to increase minimum wage to $20. And, a lot of people was like, oh, nah. And I was like, they did a study. When you increase minimum wage to $20 at those type of jobs, McDonald's, those type of jobs that pay minimum wage, almost 95% of that growth, of that increased wage, is getting put back into the economy. So, that, I think that's the big difference point.
Yeah, first Gen, he always bringing the knowledge, stating, I'm for forgiving a portion of the student loans and reforming the law so colleges don't take advantage of poorer students.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I did a poll that was actually interesting. You always think your situation is the worst situation. And I was like, what is the worst type of debt to have? And, it had credit cards, student loans, car, it had, various types of debts. And, me, I was like, student loan got to be at the top. It was unequivocally credit card debt.
Really?
79% of people said credit card debt is the worst. So I dove into that. I was like, is it? Once I did research, it made sense though. Because at first I was like, nah, but think about it. Student loan debt, most people, I'm sure somewhere there's a 50-year-old who want to quit their job and go to school and probably getting student loans, but that's not the norm. For most people, student loan debt is acquired at the earliest stages that you can make adult decisions. I would say probably 18 to 26 is when people acquire that student loan debt. So it's a shorter window to make those stupid mistakes. There's some people who fall outside of that. With credit card debt, people make those mistakes from 18 to 72 to the day they leave this earth. So it's a wider range, a longer window for you to make those mistakes. You know what I mean?
See, that's why I'm so surprised. And that's why I was just like, whoa, people do not know how loan works. Student loans about, yes, I agree. My thing is student loans is the worst debt that you can have, because with student loan debt, you cannot discharge debt in bankruptcy. And if you go delinquent, they can garnish your check. And they are going to garnish your check. Compared to if you have credit card debt or any of the other kind of debt, you can really go into bankruptcy if you want on that.
Okay, let me ask you a question then, because I think this is do you think, a yes or no answer? You can expound on it. I want a yes or no before you expound. The degree that you have, your credentials, your education standards, certificates, degrees, all that you have, do you think that they were economically worth it based on the position where you are today?
I would say yes.
So if you say yes to that, I don't think this student loan is I think student loan is the worst debt you can have if you decide to do basket weaving as a major, or if you don't graduate. But a lot of people graduate. Like for me, there's a direct return on my investment. I could go downstairs and say this degree cost me $109,000, but I know I wouldn't be in the bracket I'm in today without it. So
yeah, but it's like, but still on the one hand, because like I've been saying, it's not the loan per se, it's how they calculate the interest.
Right.
So it's just like any loan, any money that I borrow, okay, I will pay that back. But with the interest on the student loans, I don't necessarily like how that happened. So I think like if I could go back, I maybe would do it a little bit differently. And I don't know that I would have, I can't say that, because I was going to say, I don't know that once I had went to the community college, and then and my thought process was, when I had finished the community college, I said, most of the jobs are going to want you to have a 4-year degree. So I said I had to finish it. So I went ahead and finished my 4-year degree. And then it's just like now, a lot of people have master's degree. So it's just like when you're putting in your resume and you don't have that degree, most of the time your resume is not going to be looked at for the most part. Or you're going to have to really, how are you going to stand out with your experience to be able to go up against those individuals? So that's how I kind of thought of it. So that's what, I don't know. It's kind of like a tricky question. So yes, I'm okay with having my student loans, and I do feel like I got a return on my investment, but I don't like the interest on student loans
Right, right, right.
because I feel like, let's say over the years, all the interest that I paid, I feel like my student loans should be lower.
Right.
I probably would have already paid off. Well, I would say maybe not paid off, but it probably would be half by now.
Right, 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 right.
And so I think that's the part that I don't like about the student loans. And if I would have understood that a little bit better,
Mhm.
then maybe it would be different.
Right. See, and it's different too, because I know when I signed those loans, I didn't want to, but I will give my school credit. I knew exactly what the hell I was signing. When I signed those loans, they was like, "This is what the interest rate is." I mean, it was explained to me, the charts, the repayments, and so for me, I was like, I guess I'm a little bit more like I knew what I was signing up for. I don't feel like I got duped at all because
Mhm.
they gave me all the information and they was like, you can think on it a couple of weeks because I had time. You could think on it because school don't start to this day. So I didn't feel like I was pressured. Maybe if I
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
like
I don't feel like I was pressured or anything to get student loans. So no, I don't feel in
hmm,
that instance. But I still say with the interest, I don't like how the interest is calculated.
right, right, right.
Mm-mm.
I don't know. I think that's a good deal. I think if you think that if you could correlate your current income specifically to your education credentials, it's like when you go buy a car, you agree to pay this interest rate for the benefit of driving a car so it could get you from A to B. When you went to go get your education, you agreed to pay this interest rate because you knew you could get this degree,
Yeah.
and now this degree is getting you from A to B. You see what I'm saying? So like I gotta be difficult.
Mm-mm. No, that's not how I'm seeing it. It's not how I'm seeing it. Because I'm just like, no, I don't want the interest. I would prefer if I didn't have any interest in do it that way or have it, maybe like a under, I would say under 2%. I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
possibly see.
A cap. I think everybody agrees that the interest rate for federal student loans should be capped at a number, preferably 3% or less. Because anything higher than that, when you start getting to the 6 or 7%, is at a point where once your loans pass a certain dollar amount, you can't make progress unless you're making $200,000 or something a year, and that'll just be absurd.
Or I think, what if they would let you, just like on any other loan, you could refinance it and get a lower interest, especially when interest rates were a lot lower, and it not take you out of the federal student
Yeah,
loan.
yeah, yeah. That'll work too. That'll work
Yeah.
too. Yeah, if they were smart, you should actually be able to. I mean, think about it. Banks do this all the time. You can, eh, you should be able to refinance it within the government. Actually, just make the agreement with the government to refinance it at a lower rate. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's what I'm saying.
And they can still profit from it. Think about it. If I refinance with Treasury, Treasury is the federal government bank per se. We'll use the air quotes. But if I refinance my $50,000 loan with Treasury to go from a 7% rate to a 2.5% rate, and it stays at that rate, I would be willing to pay a one-time fee of
Mm-mm.
whatever. You see what I'm saying?
No,
You
I didn't
wouldn't.
say nothing about paying no one
You want
time.
everything for nothing now.
No,
You're just being ridiculous. They
I
cutting
don't
your
want no
interest
one
rate.
time fee.
They cutting your interest rate from 6.5% to 2.5%.
So
That's
you
just
think they should do that similar to doing a balance transfer?
yeah. I mean, I think the government should be able to pull that off. It's a government loan. They should be able to say, hey, because the problem is they're gonna say we're gonna lose all of this money from interest. So you got to make it work for both sides. They're gonna say we're losing all this money from interest payments. Say no. What we'll do is we'll agree to set a set interest rate. We'll reduce your interest rate from 6.5% to 2.5%. In exchange for that, you pay a one-time fee of whatever. It could be a one-time fee. It's not even a percentage. That thirty
Yeah,
thousand dollars,
okay. Yeah, a one-time fee.
yeah, you pay a
Because
one-time fee.
that's what I'm saying. In that instance, if it's like a 2%, and see at that point, you wouldn't be doing small chunks. You're gonna be doing 50,000,
Yeah,
or
you're gonna be doing
somebody
the
has
whole thing.
100,000 in student
Yeah.
loans.
Yes, I think I think it's a way that it could be done where they can still make some money. They can still make some money less than what they would be getting if they taxing you 6.5%, 7%, but they can still give people a lowest interest rate and generate some income. You see what I'm saying?
Totally.
Yeah.
So we basically said it tonight. I feel like we agree
Yeah.
that
For the
Biden
most part.
yeah, for the most part, for the most part. So we're stating here that we both think Biden is going to extend the no student loan, no interest past the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Now you were stating he's going to probably do it for 6 months. I said 4 months, but I could say less than 6 months. I think that he would do it, but we both agreed that he should just go ahead and do it for
Right.
2023 or his whole term.
Definitely.
Okay, you heard it here.
Yeah.
So, Debt Free Dad, go ahead and shout out your channel. Let them know where they can find you.
Hey, I'm on YouTube at Debt Free Dad, TikTok at Debt Free Dad, and on Instagram at Official Debt Free Dad. Y'all go ahead, check it out. There's a whole mixed bag of what you're gonna get over there, but it's definitely something you'll enjoy. I appreciate you having me on too, sis.
Of course. And his information is in the description, so y'all can go ahead and check it out. But I totally thank y'all for joining, and put in the comments, what do you think Biden is going to do? Do you think he's going to extend it, and how long do you think he's going to extend it? Also, do you think that we're going to get student loan forgiveness before 2024?
30-35.
So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Thank y'all so much for joining on a Friday night. But y'all have a good one. Until next time.